welcome to the Based Podcast.
What's up?
It is good to have you. We have got Mr. Kevin Scott with us, a great bass player who plays for many different folks. We're grateful to have him. What's up, man?
What's up, guys? Glad to be here.
Yeah, so where are you at right now? You're on tour right now, correct?
So I'm currently sitting on the bus in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We just finished up our first leg of this tour with the Warren Haynes band.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the Serpent tour, which was Slash. He has a new blues band called the Blue. I think it's called the Blue Ball or something.
Nice.
And it was us, and then Eric Gales and his band, and Samantha Fish.
Nice.
So we started the tour on July 4th, and our last date on that end of the tour was last night.
Nice. How's it gone so far?
It's going great. I mean, it's the band is just incredible guys. I mean, Warren, Warren is almost, he has like a Miles Davis approach to kind of, I think, hiring people. He's got we got Terrence Higgins on drums, who's one of the most diverse, incredible drummers on the planet. Great band leader. He's based out of New Orleans. If you don't know who he is, you have to check him out. He's an incredible drummer.
Nice.
And we usually have John Medeski on keys, and John couldn't do this run, and so we have Matt Slocum, who's great, amazing musician I've known for working with with Jimmy Herring and his band, and he was in a lot of this Black Crowes stuff and
Nice.
Railroad Earth. He's another very diverse guy, and then we have Greg Osby on saxophone. Greg's I think one of the most prolific musicians of our century. So it's really cool to work with him.
Yeah, and I'd actually got to run into you randomly. We have kind of been chatting about getting you on the podcast for a while, but you played Railbird with Marcus King, which was awesome.
Right.
I got to my artist pass got me, there was one section I found right in front of the stage where they wouldn't differentiate between VIP and artist. So I was able to slide right at it, and it was
there you go.
20 feet from you. I was able to watch until I had to leave for our set, but it was awesome.
Thank you. That was a really fun one, man. That was a cool little run with Marcus.
Yeah. Were you subbing in that run, or have you done more with him, or it just depends on who grabs you for the year? How does that work?
Well, Marcus and I go back. I met Marcus for the first time, I think when he was 14.
Nice.
I had a band called Flannel Church at the time with Dwayne Trucks and Roosevelt Collier and this guy Greg Hodges, the Wolf, they used to call him, that lived in New Orleans, but Greg was from Greenville. So we were doing the circuit, we were playing somewhere in Greenville, and Greg kept talking about this kid used to come play guitar, and Marcus showed up, and back then I just knew just one of the best out there. So we kept touch over the years. He used to come see me. He used to drive from Greenville to Atlanta to come see my crazy improv jam I did for a long time down there.
Nice.
Basically, when Marcus hit me up, he was needing somebody to come in. It was like 48-hour notice or something, and it worked out. Because it didn't affect my days with Warren or anything like that. So I was like, cool, I can come in and fill in and help you find a fill in.
So honestly, that's one of the things I was most interested in chatting with you about, because I'll see, for example, South by Southwest. You'll say South by Southwest is coming up. Here's this huge list of artists I'm sitting in with.
Right.
You have to have a system, right? How do you navigate that many tunes, that many people, not get lost? Are you, humbleness is great, but are you just that good at playing by ear? or like knowing where people are going? Do you use charts? Are you like, what is your process to retain that much information?
I get this question asked a lot. My students and some other podcasts. I mean, to be truthful, when I started kind of, when I started playing around Atlanta a lot, it was at a time, it was like 2003, 2004 when I moved to Atlanta. And there just wasn't a lot of bass players in the scene I was in. So I was getting called to everybody's band.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, again, it was like, I loved the challenge of what that was back then. But I little did I know it would affect my career later in terms of just like kind of finding the system of retaining things. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the way I do it is I don't do charts usually.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think once I write something down, I have to have it. And so, I think in terms of certain genres of music, like when I was doing, when I was starting to play with Wayne Krantz, I made sure to like learn everything by ear, even though he gave me great charts. Now I bring the charts on the gig as a reference in case I just got frazzled or something.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of gigs, people don't really want you to have the charts up there.
Right.
And I think for certain genres, like, R&B, rock and roll, there's a very important element to like being present on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and I would rather mess something up and be in the moment than like staring at a page and missing something important.
So you're not, I mean, or I guess of course you're aiming for perfection, but you're not afraid to own a mistake, to make a mistake in front of people if that keeps you locked in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like mistakes are going to happen. Like, you can't, I mean, the amount of times, I mean, in stories, and I think the way people react to mistakes really is a lens on how experienced they are.
Mm-hmm.
I
agree. Yeah.
Because when I 2016 was when I started getting these crazy calls with John McLaughlin, all these fusion people. And I was like, what's going on? This is pretty nuts. And the first thing they would tell you is like, well, here's your chart, but don't read it on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, that's kind of crazy. So in any situation, no matter how much you rehearsed, there's nights where there'd be train wrecks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a part of the nature of playing more improvised music. Now, even on stuff, more popular stuff, I mean, sometimes you have a bad night.
Yeah.
And a bad night is not being like you're gonna, you play the wrong thing every song, but a little little flubs here and there are bound to happen. I've accepted, and I think that calls for everybody that plays music, because there's been plenty of times where I'll see some of my favorite bass players or musicians, and in my head they put a flawless gig, and you'll talk to them like, well, I messed this up. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And when you get called to do so much stuff with such little notice, there's also that aspect. It's like, okay, what's the reality of the expectations of somebody telling you got to be here in 2 days? We're going to rehearse a sound check for an hour or two. And the funny thing about Marcus, was when I showed up to that, because when he hit me up for this gig, I'm in the process of learning all of Warren's material and the symphony gigs we're doing after this run. So it's like I was just getting bombarded with all this music, and and Marcus knew that. And when I showed up, we had a good rehearsal, and I made mental notes of what I didn't remember. And then we get there, and I saw some people from Doug's.net. I went, "Are you filming tonight?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is his first filming of Marcus King." But I'm like, "Oh, that's even better news,"
Yeah.
And it just doesn't freak me out because I just, if I was trying to be perfect, I wouldn't be a musician. I try to, I think there's an old saying. I think it might have been like from I forgot what philosopher it was. It was something that perfection is death. Because if everything was perfect, there'd be no movement.
Yeah.
So it's basically you'd be in like a pine box underground or something. Musically.
Yeah, no, I hear that. It's definitely it's such an art of how you learn the batches of songs that you're given. Like whether it's like you're playing one of the 4 hour gigs and somebody hands you their bar set list, or filling in for an artist. I did a fill in for an artist a couple weeks ago. I had like a week and a half to learn the music, and lately I'll chart them all once, reference if I need, but that first charting usually will really help me out to where we come back and you're like, oh yeah, no, I know where this is headed. I remember that.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of been my process, and I think we all kind of have our like it genuinely is a skill to retain an hour and a half of music or 2 hours of music. Like it's something that's just developing and developing.
Yeah, my experience is I mean, it's typical of a lot of people, but it's just my mind can get really type A. And like I started playing tuba, and so I was reading music. And so like I've had to really unlearn that mindset where I never get to embellish. I never get to think for myself. And luckily the tuba range and the bass range, really overlap kind of like that, or at least the middle section. But then I moved on. I was playing lots of chord charts or lots of slash charts that were really specific about what I wanted to play. And, I grew up playing somewhere where we were playing with tracks a lot,
Yeah.
like super modern production, just, make it great, make it simple, and then just do that every time.
Mm-hmm.
And getting out of that and moving into like the more, for lack of a better term, organic or whatever you want to call it, scene has been like I've had to unlearn quite a bit. Like I watch Nick does that kind of thing. Nick is great at being like, oh, I'm gonna sit in with this 4 hour set list, whatever, and so what if and I'm like, man, I want to be more like that. That's something like I'm still really aspiring to be like, because I will find the part, I'll nail the part, I'll play it like that every time, and I'll never forget it. But like charts are a crutch to me a lot of times. And like really taking the time to learn Nashville numbers, that has been more helpful to me than anything else.
Oh yeah.
First time I've been like, oh, that's a 4. Oh, that's a 6. Oh, that's a whatever. And you're using your head instead of just using your eyes,
Right. Yeah, I think that the hybrid is actually kind of hard for a lot of people. It's usually, I feel like in a lot of cases, one or the other. But man,
that's not how you make a living. Like that's how you get one gig that's really good, and then like if you need another one, it's a lot harder to get calls if you're not like you and you're being hyper flexible. Like that's a skill in and of itself. And seeing you play in that environment with Marcus, like I would have never known that you didn't know the set list. Like you were going with it. The whole band was listening. You could tell you guys were using wedges, I think.
Unfortunately, we had in-ears.
Oh, okay. You had it. Well, I mean, you could tell everyone, it was the conversation of the band. It wasn't pre-programmed and tight, like in a bad way. It was like very reactionary. So like someone like me would have never known that you were just filling in on that run.
Well, I appreciate that. It was that's kind of the goal. I mean, it's pre-pandemic. I looking back, it was like the pandemic happened. It was a much needed time for me to kind of reflect on, because I was doing so much at one time that there's no way I could sustain it mentally or physically, the amount of projects I was involved in. And looking back, it's like I appreciate those years where I was doing 6 different bands on the road nonstop, trying to retain all this material in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's been really nice to kind of concentrate more on like my own stuff and with Warren and Mule. Because when Mule hit me up, Warren is like a savant when it comes to music. I mean, he knows every song there is on top of his insane catalog. So, I think for the first year with Mule, I've learned like 230 something songs
Whoa.
because you have to do a different set every night.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Warren would send a set list out for the 3 days, and I'd be like, "Oh my god!" So I would spend, every morning practicing these new songs and then debuting them in front of a few thousand people.
Right.
But but I think the kind of way to retain it, the way I make little notes, ear notes about the music is like, there's always a system to where chords go. Like essentially, even like weird songs, still you can still hear kind of where they're going to go.
Right.
So I would do a lot of listening, and I would take my bass in the hotel room and practice along, and kind of make mental notes like, okay, when he sings this lyric, it's going to this change. Or when I'd make notes like that, or like, okay, when Danny Lewis goes to organ here, that means I switch to the C section or bridge or whatever, you so I think any which way I can grab different sounds and things, and also like like most of the time people are like Warren knows we never play the song, and he's going to give me some cues, make sure
Right.
so again, it's the experience factor. It's like working with people that understand what has been given and helping the process instead of letting you fail and then trying to make you feel bad about it. It's like that's absolutely just uncalled.
Right. So I've actually seen old videos of Marcus King actually where he's almost like he is so helpful with his cues. He'll use his headstock. He'll look you dead in the eyes. Like I've watched him make eye contact with his band when he's ready. Like, and seeing a band leader like that, that's like, here's where we're going, and you are all coming with me. Like he almost doesn't give you a choice, right? He kind of seems like one of those guys, and it's so helpful to be in that kind of band.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I mean, again, it goes to the experience. It's like, I mean, I think, like for instance, I think the hardest set of material I ever had to learn with all I did was when I played with Ranjit Roots band, who's the drummer from McLaughlin. I played given in Bangladesh, and all these songs were like Indian classical beats fusion, and I had no business being on the gig. So I'm learning all these songs for like in 15, all these crazy time signatures and crazy harmonies, and the charts he sent were like not right on top of it. So that's a whole nother conversation where you get wrong charts. So then
Right.
you're like, then your brain's going, am I wrong or is the chart wrong? So that was I learned how to count all that kind of carnatic rhythms on my own, like my own way of doing it, which is like I do from Alabama counting. So when I got to, we had, again, a situation, we had like an hour or two rehearsal before the gig. And he was like, man, you nailed it. This sound great, but I know you're not counting it the right way. I was like, save that till, a beer in one of our rooms later. I want to learn the proper way, but let me get through this gig.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So I think even being honest is another kind of key
Yeah.
to doing it. Just you don't want to like be too needy and be like, but you just kind of explain the situation, tell them where you're at, and there's no, it helps with the expectations are.
Right. Right. So, because you're working with so many artists, you have a lot of various backline experience.
God.
Yeah, we had started chatting because we had did some stuff for the Jad Freer Capo, which is amazing. Like we liked it enough that we were sent one from our friend Jason to borrow, and then we both went out and bought them with our own money, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, with Marcus, he had everybody had like orange rigs, or like it was orange and then it was like Fender with orange vinyl around it. And then it was a lot of like Ampeg stuff, a lot of Jad Freer stuff when you're in Europe currently, at least. And like, how are you how are you making sense of your tone night to night? What are your like essentials right now? What are you looking for to hear, especially when you walk up to a new piece of equipment that's like, oh, this tour I've got a GK or what, whatever.
Right.
Well, I mean, honestly, like my pursuit, like when I started touring Europe a lot with the jazz, the jazz guys, that's all backline gear. And the first time I ever did it, I had no clue of how crazy that was. Because you be in Germany, and culturally speaking, they're extremely proficient, and things must be like regimented, rigid. So you show them their backline, and they got everything that's on the list. Then certain parts of Italy where it's more casual and more whatever. It's like, okay,
Right.
well, here is like this weird harky head with a 410,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's when I started investing into. At the time, it was the famous Noble brand,
Yeah.
uh, and so I got linked with the dude in California, and he sent me one years ago, and I would just basically surpass whatever amp. I go right in the effects send and just use that. It'd be more consistent.
Yeah.
And I think also like the way I like to EQ things as flat anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I used to play when I was younger. I used to bring a 115 or a 112 to gigs around Atlanta, and I realized that my ears got out of being adjusted to 410s or 810s, because I started doing the first amp I ever bought was the EVS when I was like 17. With my, you save up for your amp.
Yeah.
It was an EVS 410, and then throughout the years, I got the cabinet was too big. I left it at clubs for people to play, so I was playing around with a 115 or 112. So I started leaving and playing more backline under all 410s. My ears weren't adjusted to that. So I realized, okay, I need to, can I come up with an idea of like a consistency with all these different backline heads? This is before I got the Noble. And that's even how I met Andreas from, the JF Audio guys in Italy. I was playing a gig with a fork years ago, and I was talking to this guy, and I was bitching about the back line because a certain company that is yellow and black, it doesn't have effect sense. So I had to play through an amp I really can't stand, and I was complaining about it to him.
We were actually dogging on that company before you jumped on the
We
call.
were.
Yeah,
Randomly.
and I publicly have talked, voiced my opinion about that stuff, and it's hilarious. When I did it last time, I got people sending me DMs. It was weird, but I was like, "Really? You're gonna you
It's
can
like
play
a
what you want?
survivors group.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't give if you could play through a crate practice guitar. I don't care. Anyway,
Yeah.
but so I'm complaining, and then you know, I realized, like, I was like, man, there's a certain frequency I'm not hearing because I've been so obsessed with bids. And the Noble is a great tube DI. It's kind of a B15-ish type clone, and it's just treble bass and that kind of low pass filter like bass boost. And so basically, like, after the pandemic, I was on tour with a guy, and I get this random message from Andreas, basically saying, "Hey man, I'm with this company, and what we talked about years ago, we're kind of doing." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "We want to send you and Tim this preamp." I was like, "There's my address. I'll try it out." And it's like when it comes to gear, I'm pretty hardcore. Like, if I'm lucky to have the endorsement I do, but that's stuff I would buy anyway. Like, I don't want to endorse things that I don't care about or play. I think that's I don't it's like when you're in high school, that seems looks oh, I got all this gear around, but now it's like I don't want a bunch of gear. I got too much as it is. I want to support stuff I like. So I'm kind of skeptical because I was like, I mean, we had a great conversation, and the guy's a great bass player.
Hmm.
Um, and I
He's
was
an
like,
insane
yeah,
bass player for sure.
yeah. And Andreas is great. Um, so when it came in, I kind of looked at it, I was like, okay, this is a cool looking box. It's got stuff I like. So I plug it in at the house, and I went, whoa,
Mm.
this is crazy. Then I like tried all these configurations and got the B side really saturated and distorted. And I was like, man, this is incredible. So that's when I converted, and I started bringing that out um, to everything and to the effects end. And every sound guy would go, "What is that?" And I'm
Mm.
like, "Yeah, this is kind of weird prototype thing, you know." And, so I mean, that's I mean the best way to deal with back with the question. If you don't have the bread to get a preamp or do that, it's just kind of like make sure that um, if you're playing through an amp you can't stand, spend a little time getting it to a sound that um, you can live with, you know, or just buy the capo and never have to worry about it
All
again.
right, there you go.
There you go.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So it's cool, and if people go to their Instagram, there's a couple posts that have like your settings or what your settings were, kind of thing, and it was really fun being able to go back through the different like players and see like, oh, this uh kind of interestingly enough, and between Nick and I, where we landed in our different settings, I think there's a lot of features, and usually something with a bunch of knobs turns me off, but for whatever reason, not on this. Um, I think there's multiple ways to kind of get to the same place. Like I was going to the right side, which was like the mid push saturation area, but then I was like cutting like 500 just a little bit, and then like Nick was more on the F side, that's the tubey thing, and then he was boosting 500 a little bit, or like Tim was adding some bass and stuff, but he was like blending in dry signal. And then if you listen to them all, you're like, these are actually like there's a little bit of difference, but there's an interesting way to get to similar places. And then when you put the B side on top of it, kind of what comes out, I mean, it's still very flexible, but it's like it's kind of like concocting a formula, and then at the end of it, the recipe, you're like, oh, all of these are really badass. Like all of these
Yeah.
also all sound great. It's hard to find a bad setting on it, even when things are cranked.
I know it's wild. I mean, I don't use the B setting. I don't use the A setting when I'm on Warren. Um, but with Mule, I use the B setting as my compressor.
No,
And
yeah, yeah,
I'll blend it where it's like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere because one of the crazy things I learned about because I'm SBTs, I love them. Love especially early '70s SBTs.
hmm
I think they're fantastic. Um, but what I realized playing with Jimmy Herring is that once you go to a certain level of volume with an SVT, you're actually compressing. You're not
yeah.
getting loud.
It's almost like the amp collapses under you, like you're pushing it, and then it
Yeah,
just goes like soft or saggy or something.
yeah, it's like sand or something.
Yeah.
So that having the capo, it's pretty incredible because now I can just dive in the sound I want, and then
hmm
I'm still getting this through the tubes essentially, and I can get a little more volume than I need instead of starting to sound like washy. So yeah, it's wild, like different configurations, like even in the studio, like I've done sessions where I brought that out, and engineers like, we don't really need to use that, and I was like, trust me, just give me a signal. I mean, you have, I love, like, you have a need console, you have everything you think of, but just give me, that'll be my dry signal. And every single time, I'm like, what is this? What is this?
So are you typically a P bass guy? I feel like most I've seen you lately, at least, is P basses.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, you do the Sarek thing too, and you've got is it like an aluminum guitar situation too?
yeah, I mean, technically, I'm a P blood P bass guy.
Right.
I mean, I converted when I was 23 to only playing a P, and that was a weird time period because that was still on the cusp of like I would show up to gigs with it, and people would really ask me like, "Where's your Warwick?" or "Where's your,"
Right.
weird. But since joining Mule, it's like I realized, man, like I need that Thunderbird or like Gibson kind of sound. So my buddy down at Baker Guitars, he built me the first Thunderbird copy that I use, and then I have a Gibson Ripper that's completely modded. Because all my pickups are Albedician pickups. This dude from Atlanta named Alex, it's a genius. He's just his wines are unbelievable. So the Mule gig, I realized, man, like as much as I love playing a P bass, like I need it doesn't do everything for this gig.
Right.
And then through that, your ear starts hearing different things. And that kind of led me to the Illuminati thing because I have a signature model coming out this fall. It's basically like a Thunderbird on steroids.
Nice.
So, and I think that bass is pretty diverse. I mean, it's kind of pretty radical to body shape, which I like. And then with the Serix, again, I got with Jake Serix, he was still making him in his kitchen in Chicago. So I had I had the first Midwestern that had the first B90.
Sick.
And that was an interesting thing because, he wasn't really known that well at the time. And I really wanted a bass with a Dark Star pickup in it. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Man, would you be my guinea pig and try this?" It's like, sure. And I loved that bass for years. But it's funny, like eventually, the sound of that bass it just kind of just left my ears, and it kind of sat around. And a friend of mine, Memphis, ended up buying it. But I got a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I just acquired this '77 Music Man for $1,200
Nice. Wow. What a steal.
somehow.
Yeah.
$1 a pound.
I called the guy and said to him, "Man, this bass is worth even the refin $6 or $7 grand at this condition. Why are you selling it?" And he goes, "Well, blah blah blah." Give me the backstory. And I was like, "I will take it off your hands right now for $1,200, but for my own consciousness, my conscience, like it's worth a lot more." And
Yeah.
he said, "No, man, it's all good." And then someone offered him more, and then I was like, "Man, we had a deal, and then we worked some stuff out, but I got it for $1,200."
Nice.
So now I've been playing that on the Warren gig. I've been playing the P just for Soul Shine, but I put flats on that. Now I'm kind of obsessed with that sound.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So in addition to the capo, you got to work with Jad Freer on a head, on a tube head. Tell me about it's called Volta, is that correct?
Yeah, Volta. Yep.
Nice. So how did that come about?
Well, the Sisma, when the Sisma came out, they sent me one of those, and I was obsessed with it. I was like, okay, now I can just bring this head, and I don't even really need to bring the cop up. I can bring the Sisma. It's like the same thing with the two preamp. But there's just something to be said about playing in a rock and roll band and having that tube power. And we played the Sisma on some stuff, and it sounded great, but there was just certain things missing. Just the nature of the amp. It has nothing to do with the quality of the amp or how good it sounds for this gig. Right. And so basically, they hit me up like, "Why don't you play the Sisma?" I was like, "Man, I got to have a tube amp. I can't, And so we started talking about the design of it. And then they somehow made it all happen. And it wasn't weigh like 18 pounds.
That's awesome.
Or something. And it's literally an SVT on steroids. Like it's insane.
Yeah, one day. One day, if they have good U.S. distribution, I would love to try one. I have a Sisma on order. It should be here in a couple weeks, so I'm very excited about that. I'm lugging, like, we're van touring right now, so it's like
Yeah,
what can get in the van, and I had a '70s SVT, and I let it go mostly because I wasn't recording with it because it was too loud for me to record with it. There's not an attenuator on the market that could take the power of it. And I have a B15 in my studio and I have a child on the way. And I was like, all of these things add up to it's got to go.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there. I feel terrible. It's got to go. So I sold that and I was like, okay, I think the next best thing is probably going to be the Sisma for the size I need because I have like a Pelican pedal board, little hole for the Sisma, do that. And then whenever I'm trailer touring or bus touring, I can have another conversation about what gets to get
sure.
bigger now. But still around town, like I'm always going to need the dinky, tiny little Class D things. Like, I know we're splitting hairs, but like it's not for me. And it's especially, I'll look back at my ultra lightweight amp on a 410 and it's like bouncing while I'm playing and I'm watching it like almost fall off. And I'm like, whether or not it sounds good, this is not very inspiring to me. This is a toy, is what it feels like.
Yeah, and that was a conversation. I mean, and I absolutely despise Class D, like low quality Class D.
Mm-hmm.
I've had arguments about it, but to me, I think it's the sham that people are going to, sell something that costs next to nothing for, $800-900.
And nobody talks about it's like all the same module. It's like
Yes.
there's like one or two practically cards that go in, and it's in all of them.
Boom, they're all the same.
Yeah.
And there's no fixing it. That's the other thing you were kind of getting to just now. There's no fixing. When they break, they're done. You get another one.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
hardest part of a lot of it. I'll also say like the Jad Freer stuff, they use circuit boards, but a lot of it's through hole. I won't say everything because I don't know that for a fact. But I did have to get an LED swapped on my capo, and the guy actually was like, this was way more fixable than I like even the thickness of the circuit board. He was like, it takes heat enough for me to be able to heat solder, put something else through, it not be an issue. Cause usually you apply heat to some of these circuit boards and they just collapse. Or maybe you can get it fixed one time, but it's not going to do it again. And like I was really surprised because I always, whenever you take something with a circuit board or anything new to someone who's going to just take a look or whatever, you always expect to get it back and hear them just like, man, it was so hard.
Right.
Man, it was this. Man, it was that.
It's too tight. It's too modern.
Yeah. And it's like, just looking at the capo, you're like, the amount of connections on here, this is about to be not fun for somebody to look at. But he was like singing its praises, which I was like, okay, all right. I don't feel like it's all hype at this point. I feel like there's a lot of substance here,
I've been trying to poke holes in all of it, so I started working with him. That's what's so
right.
great. I mean, I really, I think how they've set the bar now, because the thing about the Sisma, that's Class G technologies. It's like a whole nother can of worms. I mean, when I first started taking the Sisma out, again, the person I was out with didn't have their own front of house. And every gig, the front of house guy go, "What is this amp? It sounds perfect."
How are you on, something like the Sisma or an SVT or whatever? Are you keeping it pretty clean on the front end and using the capo or something else as an overdrive if you need an overdrive? Or do you typically try to find that sweet spot between breakup and ultra clean? Like, is there like a spot you go to?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it just determines what the gig is.
Right.
For my own personal sound, like I do like. I think the bass is always meant to have a little hair on it, no matter what, and that's clean to me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even if it's a tiny bit, that's kind of our version of a compressor.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't like using compressors live at all. It's especially when the sound guy's doing one and you're doing one, it's too much.
We
in my
agree
opinion.
heavily.
You know,
Yeah, I use a compressor, but man, I'm so weirdly picky. I'm like, if it reacts, it like on my board, I have one, and it's like the knob's on like 5%. It's like this much.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm with
Yeah.
you. So, and you said something really cool. Using the capo, using an amp like a compressor, overdrive. We're all just like we're sawing out parts of waveforms. Like we're just chopping waveforms. So it's like,
Exactly.
how smooth do you do it until it chops, or some of the more like harsh distortions, or like a cheap amp just boom cuts it. You know, it's not replicating the entire waveform.
Right.
Exactly.
And that is, I think part of that is, you know, maybe you can't hear it. I would argue that you can hear it, but you can feel it. You can feel it a lot. You plug into an amp and you're like, this amp feels this way. This amp feels this way. And really, no matter if it's Class D or not, what they all feel different. And there's something to be said when you plug into an SVT or a big old tube amp and you're like, that feels a lot different. Not even like 20% different. That feels like 40% different. And it's
Different universe.
Yeah, it's like, you know, watts measure as watts. You know, Class D watt and a tube watt measured the same. They don't feel the same.
They don't.
They don't act the same.
No.
That's you know, I remember when I really dove into what that meant, you know, about the solid state first. I'm like, man, I'm sorry. You know, when I played through an SVT, the way the notes sound and how fat that tone is out of that huge amplifier, it doesn't matter what Class D or, you know, solid state amps. It's a whole nother
So
category. I mean, it's completely different.
yeah, so with the Volta now,
Yeah.
you were inspired by what you like about an SVT, but you went this direction too. So what do you get? What's different besides weight? I guess, and that could be just your biggest need. You know, I don't know what's different. What makes somebody look at that versus an SVT?
So, I mean, the big thing is that even though, okay, so you can adjust on the back of the amp. There's ways to basically adjust the power structure. You can adjust the ohms, how much power is coming out of it. You can adjust what the line out is if you want pre-tube, post-tube, or just direct from the amp. There's a lot of different options. And then the big thing is the bypass switch, which is kind of like how a Marshall or something.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool about the bypass switch is you can use it as a boost, or what I like to do, honestly, is if I like to use the capo in the bypass switch on.
Interesting. So the
So
capo is
it's
your
like,
EQ.
yeah. So it's pretty wild because, you know, when I first took it out on the first European run, me and my bass tech Brett, we were just having a field day trying different configurations with it, and we decided, at least for Mule, it made more sense to have the bypass up and then use the capo as kind of the EQ.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we did with Warren Haynes, we did the opposite because, you know, Warren has got more of he has a few rockers, but it's mostly it's still something like kind of a songwriter, R&B, soul type thing for the most part, funky. So when I plug direct in, or I would use the capo, I would turn the capo off and use a clean DI. It had the characteristics of like a vintage SVT, but it almost seemed like the frequencies that I really love about it were enhanced. It's hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing through their cabinets. Their cabinets are absolutely nuts. Like,
I'm excited to check it out. I've got the 212 on order.
Dude, I hate. I mean, I love the fact that I talk about this so much because it's like just so almost too good to be true. Because it's so perfect, you know. But I mean, the cabinets are as good as their heads.
Nice.
I mean, I have, you know, over the years, I'm searching for a cabinet that breaks up a certain way and doesn't with the subs, you know. And this brand called that came out over the pandemic that I was really talking about was this 212 cabinet, was 900 watts. Um, that sounded good, but eventually, like I would, there was certain things missing with the subs.
Mm-hmm.
But with the 2 410s, I played in Europe. I'd hit a meat box and I'd hit an octave pedal, and it would sound completely clean, like in the way you want it. It would sound farty.
Nice.
And the P and the J sounded amazing through it, and the Syric. So
Yeah.
I the cabinets are nuts.
Yeah, I'm pumped to check it out. I think I'll be able to do kind of the first documented online like review of it, because we've had some people that have gotten them, but nobody I've seen in the States has gotten like I don't know, for like a bigger mid-sized gig rig, you know, something that I would have as my daily driver. So it's cool. I'm you know, gonna mic it up and do all the stuff. You know, nobody's gonna be happy because cab demos are very difficult.
Yeah,
But it's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So like as we wrap up, we were talking a little bit. So you actually have a record label, is that correct?
yes.
Tell me about that.
So the label's called 29th Street Editions. 29th Editions, and it's me and this guy, Austin White, who's an incredible composer and bass player. And we met over the pandemic when he was taking lessons from me, and we really hit it off. And they come to find out that he was like this amazing, like ambient synthesizer composer on top of it. And he had a label called GSI Records that did a lot of great modern jazz labels around New York. And then eventually we have these discussions where we're both into like the same kind of experimental, like more improvised based music. And I was like, let's just start a label together. That's what we've done. We've had a few releases, got a lot more in the can. And in fact, I got a drop box from our engineer Jason today with a whole bunch of edits. I'm gonna have to make some list on for some of these albums. But you know, we've got some amazing artists. We got the Greyhounds are on there from Austin, Spencer Pope from Atlanta, Evan Sarver. It's like a collective idea of taking people that are into experimental or ambient or improvised scenes and kind of bring them together.
That's awesome.
So, sick.
If you know people who are into do that kind of thing, send them my way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last thing. We didn't talk about this, so it's a surprise for Nick too.
Love it.
Let's do like some really quick rapid fire. Okay. Or like odds and ends. So my question is like, what is your like on tour safe space or like safety thing? Like some people it's like, if I have my specific brand of deodorant, I feel like I'm at home and I can travel well, or my blanket or pillow or what, like what's your thing? Is it music or what is your like, or is it like I buy beef jerky at every gas station? Like what's your thing?
Honestly, cold brew coffee.
All right.
Oh yeah.
I like that.
If I have my cold brew, it's like I'm at home for, you know, at least 10 seconds in my head, you know, either that or cold brew. And then maybe number two would be that brand, Dude Wipes.
Perfect.
They make a face body wipe that you can't flush. It's a cooling wipe. So like my morning thing when I wake up on the bus, because we get in hotel rooms, but I tell the TM just to let me sleep and not wait be up at 5 in the morning.
Right.
As I get up, I get I hit a cold brew, get my fucking wet wipe, and I'm like
There
home
you
for
go.
3 seconds.
Sometimes you got to wipe your dude off. You got anything?
Let's see. No, I'm always thinking lately we've been in what's the catering meal that you're like, if I see pot roast one more time, like what's the one that you're like, why is everybody doing this lately?
I mean, any salmon dish.
Okay.
It's like I love salmon, but it's like, man, like how many days in a row
Yeah.
is
Salmon
that
doesn't do well in those metal trays. It like
it's so, I don't like the way it looks, the tray.
yeah, right. All right. Here last thing. So what inspires you right now, or like what is your guilty pleasure thing? It could be movies or TV, like I don't know, Game of Thrones or House of Dragon is out right now. Like
Yeah,
what do
hobby, whatever.
what do you do to just like veg out?
You know, my wife, she kind of keeps me in the loop of what to watch. You know, I didn't know the TV for years. You know, but that show Sweet Tea, what
Okay.
was it? No, that was it. No, Sweet. I just watched it. It was the show about like the post there's a sickness around the earth, and all the babies are being born hybrids.
Oh my gosh. Nice. I need to watch this.
And
Yeah.
anyway, it was an incredible show, and like um, it's so cool. This last run we did, my wife got to go on with us on the bus for 13 days. However long it's been, but so we got to. It was actually pretty cool because it felt more like home because
Yeah.
all the stuff that we do to get through in here. Because one thing that kind of keeps me grounded on the road is I like to write my thoughts down. Definitely reading. I listen to a lot of like different levels of black metal, which just kind of keeps me
Nice.
kind of grounded. But yeah, just random TV shows, man. I mean that one's I don't think it's Sweet Tea, but that one I'm watching Better Call Saul. Kind of finished that up finally.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's important to kind of have some like brainless activities and kind of.
Yeah.
I think it's also important when when you're on the road with a full band, a crew, to find private time for yourself.
Right.
That's away from them, away from the band, away from even FaceTime with your wife or talking with your family. It's like I still need like some quiet time, and
Right.
one way to do that is just put my phone on standby and just taking a walk. And
Yeah.
I might do a bar by myself. It's close. Just kind of sit there and stare at something. That's a good point about that's kind of important to find something to do besides the obvious out here.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy to fall into those like same rhythms of like I guess we'll just sit here and watch TV because in an hour we got catering, and then an hour after that I probably ought to get ready, and then an hour after that we're getting on stage, and it's super easy to just like forget time for you. So I get that too. That's why I picked up running, just to get off that bus.
Yeah, because I just start eating. Like if I'm bored and there's catering, whatever, I just start eating and eating, and like I got to stop doing this. I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah.
This is so bad.
Yeah, and it's like every day is like processed deli meats. I had a really good system for a while. Where I was real big into like strength training, like powerlifting. So that would be the ultimate excuse. Where mind you, like financially, it wasn't the most viable thing because you have to Uber to the specialized gym.
Right. Yeah.
And there was always some outrageous day pass. So
Right.
you're out $40-something to go, but that was always a good move because no one else did that but me. So I was
right.
So okay, I got 2 hours. I'm gonna go run at this weird, strength, starry strength gym or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Sick, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Love your music. Hope to chat again.
Awesome.
So,
Critical.
yeah, have a good time on the road. See you, man.
Absolutely. Talk to y'all soon.